So there's nothing to get because there's nothing. Because there's nothing. There's nothing beyond this. What's here, what's obvious, is what is. And that's nothing. Isn't anything that you can recognize or say anything about. Doesn't have... Because the things that we talk about, we know because of their limitations. Their edges. What separates them from other things. That's how we know things. We know what they're not. We know the qualities that they have, which are limitations. What is doesn't have any quality. It doesn't have any limitation. It's unconditional. What we know is all about conditions. It's all about the way things are. But what's here, what's obvious, what's just already here as it is, doesn't have any condition. You can try to describe the condition of things, of what's appearing, but you can't catch it. You can't catch it with words. You can't catch it with your hand. You can't catch it with anything, because there's nothing that isn't it. Can't get outside of it to grab it or describe it. So you go open the dictionary and try to find the word for this, just what is here. It's not there. There's never been a word for what is. All the words are just ways of telling stories. They're words about words. We say it's conceptual play. And that's what makes the stories. And the stories are marvelous. They give us the world. All these words and all this knowledge and all the things that we can chop up into pieces and make strings and then build with the strings. Build castles, lives, relationships, everything. Spend the day building with concepts, words, language, ideas, knowledge. It's all stuff. But it's not what's here. I mean, it is what's here, right? But it's not what's just obvious. Because what is just obvious doesn't have any necessity. It's not in a story. It's not usable. It's not describable or relatable. There's nothing to do with it. It's just everything as it is. Everything and everything has never been. It's never been here. It's never happened. It's just what's happening, and then what's happening has never happened. It's always happening. That's a way to talk about it. Say it's always happening. What's appearing is always appearing. But that's too much. Because what we want to do is say what is just obvious. And there's no way to say what's obvious because it's too obvious. It's too obvious to hold with a word. Too obvious to speak. It's what every baby knows. And everyone knows. Every animal, every plant, You could say, I just use the word know. It knows, what everyone knows. But I also said it's not knowing. So what everyone knows is unknowing. What babies know. So, we say new babies don't know anything. They don't even have a way of knowing. They don't have the tools to know. They don't have the apparatus. They haven't developed knowledge, the means for knowledge. Well, there is no means for knowledge. That's the whole point. So-called adults who have become big knowers, have learned how to know, we could say, or just this mechanism of knowing has appeared in the adult. And you could say, in a sense, knowing is such a big deal. It's a huge affair. It takes up the whole vision. Look at me. Look at the knowledge. This knowing process calls attention to itself. But every person who knows, every adult who is apparently walking around knowing things, living in a story, being someone, going somewhere, doing things. It's like, the metaphor comes up all the time of a play on a stage or a movie. So the movie doesn't change everything else. It just takes attention to itself. And it somehow captures the scene so that movie or whatever's going on the stage seems to get some kind of prominence. It gets some kind of status as a story, as something interesting, as something real. But just because the movie is interesting doesn't mean that it's happening. And so I'm saying all the adults and all the people who think that this movie is real, or think that the story is happening, or think that I know something, I'm living in a world that's made out of my knowledge. It's just a distraction, we could say, because it doesn't stop the fact that what I really know is just what's obvious, just like the baby. The baby knows what's obvious. He knows it's unknowing. It just is unknowing. It is what is. It is this whole unknowing appearance. Well, everything is that. And the so-called adults, the so-called me people, the me who is walking around in a dream, in a story, is still just the obvious. The obviousness of the baby is what is. As an appearance of a person, an adult who knows. And that adult who knows will appear for a while, and then somehow it'll stop appearing. It'll disappear. it'll the movie will end. The play will stop within what's obvious. And then what's obvious becomes more obvious. It becomes more, comes to the stage. Because the stage is no longer being taken up by the activity. It's not the action isn't being attended to in that way. It's not being, there isn't a focusing on that on the movie. Because the movie really isn't interesting. There's nothing inherently interesting about the adventure of the person. There's nothing inherently interesting about anything except what's obvious, which is inherently interesting. It's inherently what it is. It's it's life. It's the real show. The real show becomes obvious. And then there's nothing to say. All the words are gone then. And then they keep doing their, they're bubbling up, and their play goes on. The play of words goes on, but it can't be taken seriously because it's so obvious that nothing is being pointed to, nothing is being built, nothing is being, there's nothing besides what's obvious. And what's obvious doesn't take words. It appears as words, it appears as everything, as forms, as adventures of all kinds, and as beginnings and endings, and as thoughts and ideas. But there's just this. If you want to say anything about all this, the most you can say is, there's just this. And even that is too much. You could say it's what's obvious, and that's too much. It's all too much. That's it.